Hi there and hello. 今回の動画では Acid Clink no Indissolve について話してます。Acid Clink is a solo project by the artist Yota Mori, and it is primarily used to create very electronic ambient styled music. However, despite that overarching genre, the music features a lot of guitar work, and also some songs are more specific as far as electronic music goes. So on this album, there is a lot of trance and synth pop, R&B, and house. There's also a little shoegaze, which I will be getting into later. Here, I feel like Yuta really follows in the footsteps of other electronic artists such as Enigma, Floating Points, Tame Impala, JPEG Mafia, and also Daft Punk. So that's a lot of different kinds of producers, and I feel like that's actually very apt because this album has a very diverse sound palette that also manages to stay incredibly coherent and also consistent as well. Many of the songs on this album are purely instrumental, but they have so much going on that it's still really fun just to listen to them and experience them too. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of the album too, is just the way that it mixes electronic and analog styles of production. There is a ton of guitar strumming on this album with very floating points like cerebral production. I think my favorite example of this, and also my favorite song, would be the one called Hide Your Navel. This has some of the best production and mixing of any song that I think I've heard in my entire life. And my recommendation is that you need to listen to this song loud. This album also has a fantastic flow to it as well. This is totally one of those albums where I feel like every song transitions perfectly into the next one to the point where you don't even notice it. And it honestly made reviewing this album a little challenging just because I thought I would be listening to one song, but I was actually one song further. That happened quite a bit, actually. The album starts off with a song called Enigma, and I think this song just does such a fantastic job of kind of introducing you to the sound palette of this entire album. And strangely enough, it really reminds me of the soundtrack for Age of Mythology, if you've ever played that. It is very new age ambient electronic, however, it's mixed with a lot more traditional elements as well. One other thing of note, and one other tangent I'd like to go on, is that this song reminds me a lot of work from the artist called Enigma, particularly his 1993 album called The Cross of Changes. There is another song on this album called Mantra, which I feel like sounds so incredibly Enigma-esque that it's hard to really even separate it at this point for me. So as I mentioned, lots of the production sounds very deeply rooted in traditional sounds from Japanese culture, but modernized with the use of synthesizers and also the ever-present guitar riffing. Moreover, just like Enigma, Yota also composes each song with a very strong foundational bass line at its core, which really helps the songs to kind of get grooving quickly and stay in my memory pretty solidly. And so as someone who has sorely missed Enigma's sound since their last album was in 2016, I am very pleasantly surprised for everything here. And I'm so sorry for talking about Enigma as much as I have. I just really like their music. And another thing I really like is Yota's singing on this album. Check out that segue, right? I think he sounds phenomenal on Hide Your Navel. However, I especially like the way he sounds on that song Mantra. He also sings on the song Remember Me, but uses a much more ethereal sort of sound effect on his voice. And also, I will say that I think this still works very well, as this is very much a drum and bass song, and I feel like adding his vocals in really any other way would be very antithetical to the sound of this song, in my opinion. I think one of my favorite moments on this album is the second to last song called Out of View. This song comes immediately after that drum and bass one, and it is a shoegazy synth pop sort of Tame Impala inspired song, which of course is why I mentioned Tame Impala earlier. It's so random, however, I do feel like it is a very appropriate sequel to that song Remember Me. I really love it a lot, and I think Yota's ability to seamlessly take the album in such a weirdo, different direction so suddenly is just amazing. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about this album. I think the production in general is just so fantastic. I think the mixing is also absolutely incredible and is one of the best examples of it that I've heard in my whole life. However, lyrically, there's not a lot going on across this entire album. As much as I love Hide Your Navel, its lyrics are there just to kind of sound cool and kind of add some ambience, I think. And I find that to be the case with a lot of the lyrics on this album. However, what I will say is that with this album's quality mainly being focused on its production, I don't really mind having the lyrics kind of be secondary to that. I think that's very natural and makes sense. I think the bottom line is that I love this album. This is Yota's 5th album as Acid Clink, and I am very much looking forward to checking out all of his prior material. I also think this is a fantastic album for anyone who is into more dancier music, but also for anyone who loves listening to very complex and very layered progressive electronic music. I think one of my favorite kinds of artists are ones who I like to kind of say make music for music's sake and I can definitely see Yota being one of those for me too. Lyrics-wise, this album is also 50-50 English and Japanese, or just about 50-50, so even if you don't understand Japanese, I feel like you would still really enjoy the English parts as well. So with all that said, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I think lots of it is absolutely fantastic, but I'm just not in love with every single song. I feel like every song is at least an 8 out of 10, but to get to a 10 out of 10, I'd kind of need them all to be absolutely perfect, and I don't want to say life-changing, but I want it to leave a real impact on me. I feel like this one is very close in doing that, but it's not quite there. I think one of my favorite 10 out of 10s that I have given out so far would be my review for Fennel's first EP. That song changed the way I listen to music, and for that reason, I considered it a 10 out of 10, and I scored that in a video, which if you're interested, you can see right here. I think it is a 10 out of 10 EP, and I don't say that a lot about EPs because that is not really what they're trying to exhibit, I feel like. So like I said, 9 out of 10 is the score. I think this is an absolute must listen if you are interested in listening to new Japanese music in the year 2025. This album only came out in January, and I've been sitting with it for a while, and I think a 9 out of 10 is fair for how I've kind of absorbed it as of this point. I also think that we'll probably be seeing this in my top 10 list at the end of the year as well, because this is just a fantastic album. At the very least, this is my favorite Japanese electronic album so far, and I don't really know how it can be dethroned, though we're only 2 months in, so that could change. And yeah, that is just all of what I had to say. So thank you for watching. Please let me know if you listened to this album or if you know this artist, and if you have any other recommendations of theirs that I should listen to first and foremost. But yeah, thank you for sticking around, thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.